Hi guys, so welcome to this session. It's not going to be at all professional, while I'm allowed it. It's going to be interactive if you want, for Jeremy's. Ladies, are you alright for you two? But there will be a discussion session after it. So we're going to go through operations and then the value and importance of quality-based systems, quality management, quality assurance. So Jeremy, who I have to tell you, is going to completely, utterly blag this. Because we asked him to do it on operations, and he's really too much of a scientist, aren't you?
Yeah.
So you've all heard about me, who I am, so get past this and on to Jeremy.
Brilliant. Thanks, Will. As Will said, and I'll explain, I'll introduce myself. Operations is something that you do because you're a scientist and you want your things to become real, and you don't trust other people to take them to the end of the journey, and so you do it yourself. And that's pretty much the story of this. Is well, actually, life outside the laboratory. Even if you're involved in something in the laboratory, you're going to take it out yourself, because people are always going to come back to you as the inventive stuff. One slide about me, biochemistry is a background, but I think what's kind of been apparent from the session this morning is that you end up wearing many, many hats, no matter what company you work in. So Will's analogy of the cruise liner, I certainly, in my job, and I don't think Will does in his job, ever think like he's on a cruise while he's doing the job. I think we're kind of, the entertainment on the cruise, which might be whitewater rafting or kind of, those surfboard wave machines kind of thing that you're on all the time. So I worked in both academic labs, industry labs. I do metabolic engineering of microorganisms to make stuff. Spent far too many years cloning, and I suppose many people have also experienced that. So whenever the revolution finally does come and a machine does all this for us, I'll be first in the line. But thankfully, and kind of what I will talk about from the operations side, is that, how do you take something from a 96 well plate and stick it in a 30 cubic meter fermenter and it still work? So Croda, you've heard a little bit about. The nice thing about being a biochemist in a chemicals company is that you get to interact across the board. So how can industrial biotechnology impact all of these kind of core parts of Croda, where they already do and have successfully done chemistry for 100 years? So biotech at Croda, we're based at Ditton. We went like this, but I described Croda when I first joined as the Ryanair of companies. So Will's already told you that our headquarters are 15 miles south of York. Ditton site is in Widnes, so 12 miles east of Liverpool. So like Ryanair will fly you somewhere close to where you want to be, but not quite get there. But yeah, we work from this Ditton site, which also has a fermentation capacity on it of a 30,000 litre fermenter, and our R&D labs. And then kind of it's a global company. Some are based in Europe, so with specific kind of jobs that they do, so personal care actives, the kind of pentapeptides that Will mentioned, and then new ways of making things. So, can plants make things that bugs can't? Well, potentially yes, and so there's activity in this going on like that. Can biocatalysis replace classic chemistry? Yes, we think so. So we have an acquisition there, and we also have the thing that broke the map, which is a marine biotechnology company in Canada. And so, as this thing evolves, the opportunity to move between these sites, work with these various sites, that also evolves and that expands. So I put this up to say, Croda's a massive company. But actually, when you split it down into the various parts, Das Chahal, who's my boss, he's been at Croda for 30 odd years, has a very senior position. I report directly to him. I can knock on his door. The team, no, that's not some huge multinational global team. It's 4 people all doing a specific job and working with those other business units to unlock kind of additional resource, take projects through and work through collaboratively. So, it is a bit like an SME inside this big cruise liner. And then this is kind of the crux of the talk, really. Being in operations is looking after this bit. So what's here is that when you start this up, that it does the same thing every single time, and there are no surprises. So when you're commercially producing a product, it has to be the same thing every single time, or it's not a product, or it's not a commercial reality. But the work to get there, and to make it robust, goes all the way back from the person who had the idea. And it's more than likely that the first person, the person that's going to spend their night sleeping on this thing when it first runs up, is probably the person that had the idea back at the very start of the day, because you're the person that's invested in that. You're the person that knows that process the very best, because you've lived it. And you've probably lived it for, we have a process that's just coming on to this sort of stage now. And the person who's been involved with it has been involved with it for 7 years. And they've kind of gone here, down to these sorts of things, bounced back up a bit when things weren't quite right, and are the experts in that process. So why would you not have that person sitting on the operations side, being with the people who know how to operate the valves and operate the machinery here to make the process work? So we had in the earlier talk this morning a bit about ideas and how to get ideas through in a big company, and that's the soft skills part of thing. From a personal perspective, it's about kind of, you pitch an idea, and it's the same as if you're a startup. You pitch an idea and you think you've come up with a brilliant idea. And what probably 5 out of 6 people tell you, well, actually, that's not such a brilliant idea. So what you do is you go grumbling off, kind of going, well, these unenlightened people who just do classic boring chemistry for 100 years but make lots of money. And then you kind of get over that period after about 5 to 10 minutes, or depending how good you thought the idea was, 5 to 10 days. And you kind of think, okay, maybe they've given us given me a bit of an insight. And so how can I make it? How can I make it better? And how can I sell it to them and make them understand why they really want to do my idea and not all the 100 other things they could possibly do? So that's that idea, market research, identify the need, the function, what does it do? Like, it doesn't matter what that chemical looks like, it's got to do something, and it's got to probably do something better. And then you go through the process, the usual thing in an IB process, how to make it. Well, what do I need? What components do I need? What's the best kind of host to do it in? And that's when you start cross-linking these various parts. Because you kind of go through the regulatory thing and go, well, actually, if I'm going to make this in a kind of class 3 pathogen, I might struggle. The regulatory side might bite me. So I'll kind of feed that back in early, and maybe not choose a class 3 pathogen as my host. I'll select the candidate. Maybe something that's really, really temperamental as a host. It's not going to live, or it's not going to survive happily in that sort of environment. So it's just across those two kind of things. And then you go through the usual thing of screening, testing what it does, going back and iteratively and developing a process, making sure your claims are ready to be moving, and then you have a product out the other end. But it's important to know how this bit works in order for you to be able to accelerate that, because you can't be doing things here early that aren't operationally viable. I think that's the take-home story of that thing. You will be involved all the way through, whether you like it or not, you'll be dragged in, and you have to, early on in your thinking, think of the operational constraints that are going to be driving things. So, kind of things, what to make. Where it's like, okay, well, what's lying around? We'll describe Croda as a company that's kind of founded on other people's wastes. So, what are those wastes? Potentially that's a cheap kind of way of making things. What can you make? Well, nature actually makes lots of macromolecules, and the macromolecules of life are probably the things that are going to be quite useful in lots of applications. And then don't be scared of saying, well, actually, I need a bit of help. And so we've been doing chemistry and even the petrochemical industry has been fine chemistry in pharmaceutical industry for hundreds of years. So actually, take what they know and see if they can make your product even better off the other side of it. But what you see, a number of things that I'm sure you've kind of suffered the pain of these sorts of grants, is you'll write a grant, or an academic will write a grant, and you'll say, I'm going to make compound X in bug Y by year 2020. Okay, so what happens when you can't make compound X? The project's technically failed. It's all about giving yourself the options in that area, and then feeding in kind of the robustness side of things. So again, just what does it look like? everything starts in a shaking incubator. There's nothing that kind of starts up here at pilot scale. You know, you need to put in your hard yards, you need to understand what your system's doing, what your process is doing, and then, you know, kind of work your way up from there. Like, you know, this is all equipment you'll be familiar with in the university lab. When it changes is when things start to be kind of hardwired in and hard plumbed in. And all you're doing at this stage is really kind of applying your learning from earlier to show that you can recreate production facilities and conditions, demonstrate that you've got an end-to-end process, that it doesn't cost the earth, and that you're checking it for yourself before you go and do it for real, and before you, so you don't overpromise and underdeliver. So this is really kind of the crux of industrial biotechnology thinking in a chemicals company, in terms of, you know, how do you get something to scale? How do you get a product? You know, so what's the thinking process? And the key thing is, and something that's really refreshing, that so I've been at Croda for just over a year now. I always thought, oh, geez, big industry, what are they going to ask? It's going to be, well, how much is it? How much does it cost? Can you make it cheaper? Can you make it? It's not. The first question I always get asked is, so what does it do? Why do I want that? Why are you making that molecule in particular? Why are you making that set of compounds? And that's really the important kind of thing in an industrial biotechnology setting, where I think we're changing. So we're not making drop-ins, replacements, trying to compete on price anymore for things. We're trying to say, well, maybe we can do things that have got better functions. And then you go through the usual things of what you always have in a chemicals process or an IB process of, well, it's also better because I'm more carbon efficient, because my theoretical yields are better than you could ever get from your old chemistry process. And you know, from that, you can then work out the cost. So if you give someone those numbers, you can give it to a finance person and they can tell you how much it costs. So that is my kind of, I don't know, slightly ideological, slightly reverting it back to reality and operations kind of talk. I'm around, I've done a number of jobs in this kind of area, Croda being kind of the last one. So as a bit of background, I have worked in a small biotech company, and that lasted 9 months. Someone in the audience was in the same biotech company that I was working in at the same time. So the whole company was made redundant, from the CEO down to the last person through to law. The thing to say is that it seems like all doom and gloom at that time, but within 3 months, everyone in that company had a new job, and quite often a better job than they had when they were at that company. So in terms of, you know, not having thinking that there won't be a job out there will. Like, with the skill sets of the people, you know, kind of in this room, you will have a job. Don't worry about that. Just pick the job that you want to do. And if it's not the right job, like everyone said, go and do something else. Like, while you can, go and do something else. And that's my last bit on the matter.
Thanks, Jeremy. Rather, is there any absolutely dying questions for Jeremy now, or would you like to keep them for the discussion group afterwards? Because I'd really like to get that going and open with more discussions, if that's a steering question. Anyway, can I now introduce you to two lovely ladies from Fujifilm Diosynth, who are going to tell us why you can't do it like that. Because you said you were going to do it like this, and now you are going to do it like this.
Oh, this is
The importance and value of 40 systems in the industry.
Okay, hello everyone. So, like I said, we've came from Fujifilm Diosynth Biotechnologies. I'm Amy Elliott, and I currently work as a stability study owner in the stability group, part of the QC group at Fujifilm. I've been there for 6 years and worked in various quality control departments.
I'm Isabel, and I currently work in the quality assurance department as a quality manager. I've been with Fuji now for just over 5 years.
Okay, so who are Fujifilm? Can anybody tell me? Anybody know? Was anybody listening to Simon this morning? Okay. Okay. So we are a contract manufacturing organisation. So we manufacture lots of different biopharmaceuticals for many different companies, small and large companies. So I bet most of you thought that we were camera people, yeah? Lots of nods.
Yeah.
So we are actually nothing, our site is actually nothing to do with cameras. So a little while ago we were actually known as Avisia. I don't know if anybody's heard of Avisia. Up in obviously the northeast in Billingham. And in about 2009, MSD bought both Avisia and Diosynth, which was based in America.
And then in about 2011, MSD sold the company to Fujifilm, who then became Fujifilm Diosynth. And as recently back as 2017, we acquired Kalon over in Texas. So we're now a global organisation with the 3 sites across the world.
So yeah, like Melissa said, we have the 3 sites, one in Billingham, Teesside, in the UK, one in Texas and one in North Carolina. We currently have 6 commercial products out there, 2 from the UK site, the others from over in America. Globally we have, well, it's actually increasing quite rapidly at the minute, but more than 1,200 employees, over 20 years of experience in biologics, and we are currently working on 300 plus molecules in process development and manufacturing.
So what is day in the life of a manufacturer at Birmingham? Well, a typical microbial alum, mainly in manufacture, involves the use of around 40 raw materials, some of them which we purchased from Croda. Each raw material needs to be assured before we can use it. So what does that actually mean, and what's involved, and why do we put the lengths that we do? Anybody have any ideas? No? No? Yes?
If you're designing a process to make something, you want to make sure your raw material supply is secure. So if you've built a plant to manufacture something else and then the raw supply dries out and things like that.
Yeah. This is why. Okay, got to go. So
Oh
these
dear.
people, we want to make sure that these people are safe. Our friends and family, make sure that nothing bad happens to them, that we know everything that's going into that drug, which could possibly be injected into one of these people. So what's the journey of the raw material? So first of all, when we're developing a process, we look at the raw material and say, have we already got it? Is it already in our process? Do we need to buy it again? If not, we go source it. But we need to know where it's coming from. Is it coming from somewhere in Europe, somewhere in the States, or somewhere where the industry determines that it's a country considered to be high risk? Is it a satellite sample? Now, what we mean by that is where the manufacturer or the vendor will supply us with the samples that they want us to test, not necessarily ones that we've selected ourselves. And that obviously gives quite a high risk because they're telling us what we should be testing, not a random sample that we picked ourselves. Will the manufacturer tell us if they change anything? If they change the bags, the process, the bottles that they supply it in, all of these things could have an impact on the material itself and how we use it in the process. It could be anything that they could change just from the manufacturing facility down to a cap on the lid. Where in the process is it going to be used? So is it going to be used right at the beginning in fermenter, where it goes through several stages of purification for its final drug? Or is it going to be used in the very last part of the process where it will feature in the bulk drug substance and go into somewhere? Do we also need to audit the facility? So anything that's used as a final excipient goes into the final drug. We will need to audit that facility. So we have a dedicated team of auditors who will travel the world. Recently we had one who went as far as China to go out and audit the facility. Just to see if they're actually doing what they say they do, operating to GMP and producing everything how we need it to be produced. And also what testing is required, again depending on where it's going to be used, will depend on what testing is required. Does it just need a quick ID or does it need a full raft of every test? You know, some of them are pages and pages of analytical testing.
So what is quality control? Is it just being a scientist in the lab all the time? Looking brand new equipment, this is some of our nice equipment at Fujifilm. Looking down microscopes, is that what QC is? Actually, no, it really is a key function to ensure that the product quality is maintained at all times. Slow on the clicker. And to ensure that the material meets the specifications are set by ourselves, customers and the regulators. We want to make sure the product is safe, we don't want to hurt or potentially kill anybody. But what is QC really? So do we just test it and say that, yeah, it's fine? No, there's actually a lot of work is involved in quality control and before it even gets to quality control. So we need to develop and validate all of the analytical methods and things like that, but we have to bear in mind all of the regulations as well. But once we have everything, can we then just go and test it? Nope, there's still more to be done. So we need to make sure all of the equipment is qualified. We have a dedicated equipment team who ensures everything is qualified and calibrated and ready for use, and that everybody is trained, all the analysts are trained appropriately. We need to make sure we have all the reagents and consumables before we can go ahead and test everything, because quite often we have a limited amount of time in which we can test and produce the result, because things are critical. We need to make sure we have all the appropriate documentation in place. This has to be approved by quality control, quality assurance and the customer, and issued prior to use. And then we actually need a sample to go ahead and test, whether that comes from manufacturing or from a demonstration lab where they run small scale manufacturers, if you like. But we can't just test it and say it's okay. Following testing, we need to make sure it is signed and to show that it's been tested as per the method. Everything needs to be written in accordance to GMP. Does everyone, or does anybody know what GMP stands for? Yes, yeah, good manufacturing practice. Okay, so Fujifilm follow the current good manufacturing practice. Every piece of work is actually checked by an independent person to make sure the person has filled everything in correctly. Sometimes things don't go as planned and we do have certain deviations from methods, and these all need to be investigated. We need to know why it didn't quite go the way it should and why the deviation happened. Sometimes it can be an out of specification, so the product purity maybe wasn't quite what we expected, so why is that the case? So then we can report it and say it's okay. No, there's a further step, and it now has to go through our quality assurance, and they do a full review of every piece of work, every GMP piece of work. So what else do we do? Lots of things. So there are many different departments in quality control, so we have a little list that I'll just run through. So there is stability, which is the department that I actually work in, and we actually analyse the drugs over a 5-year period, and we give that information to our customers, and then they can then decide on the expiry of the product. We have a cell assay team, a manufacturing support team, environmental monitoring, a microbial team, analytical project managers, it's easier to read than say, NPI, which is a new product introduction team, a training and validation team. We have a sample reception, and these people are involved in receiving all of our samples or dealing with all of the shipments of samples to wherever they need to go and allocating out the bulk material that we have ready for testing. And we have a raw materials testing team. So looking at that quality control, although there is a lot of lab-based jobs and things, there is actually lots of different departments that you could work in, and there's lots of room for growth, if you like, and for progression. It's a really great department, quality for that.
So why are medicines regulated? Yep. So this is one like patient safety. So here's a list of some of the most high-profile cases of where something's gone wrong in the last 100 years. Probably the main one on there that most people will know will be the thalidomide from the 60s, early 60s. That was a problem, everybody would know, because there was a drug given to pregnant women or women of childbearing age, and it actually resulted in babies being born with deformed limbs. That was cited down to poor controls of clinical trials and poor controls in manufacturing. So it's a failure in the quality control. This lady here, Frances Kelsey, she was the reviewer for the FDA in charge of thalidomide to authorise it to be used within the United States. She said no for the United States and wouldn't allow the FDA to authorise its use, and therefore it wasn't in the States. There were no thalidomide babies born in the United States, and that was all down to her. She only died recently, didn't she? But there are still problems happening today. So as recently as 2016, in a trial in France, this was a phase 1 clinical trial for a new drug that was going was to treat severe chronic pain and anxiety. Because of this, it was a phase 1 first inpatient that had no clinical data prior to this. It was injected into over 100 people, and unfortunately one person died, and 5 other people were left in a seriously critical condition in hospital because of this drug, because of a failure in the quality control of it. Thalidomide is actually still used today. It has gone through a bit of a change. Originally when it was brought in, it was thought to be a pain relieving drug. Then it was given to pregnant women for morning sickness, and now its indications are towards cancer treatment. So it's had a bit of a clean up, and it's a bit better now. So these are some of the key regulatory agencies, and these set the standards. So over in America, everybody has probably heard of the FDA. They're part of the US government, and they control every drug that is licensed within the states. Alongside them, we have the US Pharmacopoeia, which is the standard for testing. They're a non-profit, not run by the government. They're an independent agency, and they provide recommendations and guidance to what you should be testing things for. In Europe, we have the European Medicines Agency, or the EMA, and they're kind of the American version of the European version of the FDA. And under them, we also have the MHRA, which is the British version of the FDA, but all countries have their own. China have a Chinese FDA. And as America have the USP, which is the guidance for testing, we have the European Pharmacopoeia, or the EP, which also does exactly the same thing for Europe. Above all of that, we have the International Conference on Harmonisation, so they have harmonised everything with the FDA, the MHRA, and all the regulatory bodies across the world, and the pharmacopoeias, to try and make sure that everybody's looking at the same thing. You haven't got 2 people contradicting from different sides of the world. Recently, what has happened is the FDA and the MHRA and all of the governing bodies have joined forces, so to speak. So previously you could be audited by the FDA and the MHRA at the same time in the same year, but now the FDA kind of said, well, if the MHRA wouldn't have good enough for us. And then you have the World Health Organization above all of that, who look at the global standards. So in summary, QC and Q8, we cover a whole host of activities, we do lots. But we are independent from the business, we're not governed by manufacturing. If anything, we kind of police them and tell them what to do. We're there to protect people, and that's the key to our function. We're completely independent. But by getting the quality right, the business gets it right, and then we keep the patients safe. Because the fundamental role of quality is to protect these people here, our family and our friends, and we love you.
So we do have, as I know some of you popped over there when you came in, but we do have a few little freebies. And if you look on the pens that are over there, it has the careers website as well for Fujifilm, which is always worth having a look at, because there is opportunity here in the UK and in America if anybody fancied that. So just worth looking at.
So, is there any direct questions for the ladies? I would say, from a quality point of view, 2 aspects for our business. I said this morning about we get audits for our sustainability. And so many people look at sustainability as the ecological side of it, are we doing it the right way, what about the environment? And it starts to get branded by that. But two things sit higher than that. There's economic sustainability, because you have to be able to afford to do the right thing. And above that is a quality-based sustainability, because the risk associated with doing something wrong, we manifest it there with a loss of life. And you could argue a loss of life, even one thing even worse than loss of life, is an ongoing impaired function. So it changes somebody's quality of life. And so within the industries that we serve, and that we do, we have the opportunity to do harm. And we have to ensure that wherever possible we protect against that. And that's why it's an absolute crucial thing. And if you were to look, if we be so base and look at salaries, right? I know it won't interest you at all. You're not bothered at all because you just want to propel society to a better place. But you might look at the CEO, but you just look at the salary expectation bandings of a term called a qualified person. The QP, this is the person who puts their name to say, I am responsible for releasing this material into it. With that responsibility comes significant reward. Now, it's an awful lot of testing and to be able to demonstrate that you're capable to get there, but it's a massively financially rewarding role if you're willing and wanting to take that responsibility. I mean, I can look from a chemical, and we joke about materials, understanding the value of quality. So I'll take an example. There's a product called Polysorbate 18. It's simply putting sorbitol, hydrogenated sugar, and reacting that with a stearic acid, and then a bit of ethylene oxide. Won't get any simpler. There's grades of that, it's 100% active, sold for $5 a kilo. But there's grades of that, and that will do function for solubilizing into these drugs in the formulation. That will do the job. Why then is there markets where it's £1,000 a kilo? Because there's purity standards when you take out all those other trace compounds. Because these guys, when they're putting a drug onto the market, have to understand every possible interaction with the formulation. And the cost of doing all that, the testing, the time to market and the risk, whether it be denaturing if it's a biologic, agglomeration, which is a huge issue for biologic manufacturing and supply to market. All these, it's understanding what value proposition is, and it's what quality unites it all together. So, and it links and why these two groups are put together in operations and quality, they go hand in glove. So, enough from me. Let's talk. Any of you have ideas of wanting to go into manufacturing operations or going beyond the lab to do larger scale? Does that float anybody's boat? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got enough of them. We've got a cohort of people. Why?
Next challenge.
What do you think? If you were going to be, you saw that 30,000. Okay, I'll put it a different way. Why have these guys just invested in Texas to put in a unit this single-use throwaway reactors? But why do you think it's, if they're going to manufacture the same molecule, why do you think they've gone for a throwaway reactor? I mean, to put in, how big's each one? Is there 1 cubic metre?
Yes, I think so.
1,000 litres.
Yeah, 1,000 litres.
1,000 litre. So they've gone in. to put in a 1,000-litre fully GMP facility reactor in a stainless steel is going to be 3 to 5 million, I would guess, as a ballpark. And these are throwing them away. Why do you think?
So we can test it before we scale up.
No, that is scale. That's production. So they're built. It's like building a car to take you to the train station and throwing it away.
Well, throwing the engine away. Not the whole thing.
And all you do.
Can you use it again?
No.
The same quality. That's why we like to change it. When the quality is going down, so we need the same quality for the products. If they actually
It's hard to do that.
Is it because you don't have to clean it more about if it's
cost of service.
It's bleeding cost, is that
It's not the cost of the cleaning, it's the assurance that it's clean. And that's the mutation of the cells during manufacture, because these are looking at the metabolites that we're producing out of it. How are you going to ensure that each and every time? Because the cost of that batch, the value of that batch, is immense. So it takes it so the internals of it, throw it away. Don't even bother. So, and that's purely, solely driven by quality assurance. So, leading question to you. What do you think one of the biggest challenges you will be of running an industrial scaled fermentation facility? And in the base, cleaning it. Knowing it's sterile, the ability to be able to take a shake flask, walk over, lift a thing, put it in, set the autoclave going, and going, taking it out and knowing that it's sterile. That ability to glue that on, all that immense pipework from those where the raw materials going in, they're coming out, everything like that, it's an order of magnitude different. Orders of magnitude different. So you've got that with the operators, the people, and to get them all to understand that one or two bits in there that aren't supposed to be there can really give you a big headache.
There's another factor as well, probably health and safety. Because you've got to think the amount of caustic that you use to clean a fermenter.
Yeah.
You've got to have people putting that caustic, hot caustic in it and cleaning it out. So that's another big factor for us, protecting the staff.
So you said you're interested in the operation side.
I mean, I've done a few zero reiterating plant cells into low plants, most of the annoying instruments and such.
Yeah.
So you're basically like, well, it's one of the jobs you can get, you know, why not? Maybe it's worth it. Maybe there's lots of money.
And that's a good sense in looking at plant stems. So Meristans, if you're looking at we have a business. There's not many companies that have got it to large scale. Company in Germany do the tax oil manufacture, but that's a challenge.
That's what I mean, the science, in the house with the quality insurance, when people are trying to produce things in living plants, something else comes in, no?
Well, it is. And this is, rightly or wrongly, whenever you're taking your domain of control, you're responsible. If something changes out in the environment, and so you get a cross mutation, well, that's nature. I mean, the hypocrisy on aspects of genetic modification, when you can class mutagenicity from radioactive mutagenicity as being a natural.
I was thinking, I think of when they're doing tobacco for production of pharmaceuticals like the CMA, I think.
Yeah.
But, the one thing I was wondering about is like, when you're doing this, how do you get that GMP learning? Because I didn't know any GMP when I was doing like, my studies at PhD or as a master. And then when I started like looking for jobs, like when I was done with my master, my PhD, and I started looking around for what jobs I have to search for, like multiple jobs a week. a lot of get like these many Q&A positions, because there's a lot of those, and they all like ask you to have like years of experience with GMP and such.
And this, I'll pick on these lasers over some more. Depending on which industry you'll go to, you'll use the term good manufacturing practice, GMP. And everybody thinks that it's one thing. In the pharma industry, there's pretty much alignment. ICH7Q. That's the one. I was nearly close. So the orange book. So when you said about the ICH, it's international. There's effectively a book there, and it tells you all the things you have to consider. Yeah. So everything you have to consider for it to be, and that's defining your products. So knowing the ranges, the windows of acceptability, the process validation, what can go wrong and what you do in the event of that, the measurements and controls. So you can read that book and then know what you're going to be asked. And actually, if you will familiarise yourself with that, the action, if you came to me and said, I read and understood that book, I have not carried out any GMP work, but I've read it and I can see how I've done to ensure that every time I do my experiment, I want it repeatable. I follow these guidelines of formality because it's good manufacturing practice. This isn't somebody who's just gone away and written a book. It's taken all the best practice of all the bits of industry, the learnings, and tried to condense it into one area.
It gets thicker every year as well.
It does.
It needs to be that thick now.
So if you read that with a farmer, that's the gold standard. Then there's food codex requirements that are level below. We in the chemical industry, to bridge the gap to these guys, we have a thing called exit practice where our excipients are going into that, so the benign materials into it, we're looking to meet the standards to make these guys a little bit easier for them. So we all have to balance it, but if it's GMP, that's your place to go, and then work backwards. And it's having an appreciation of what it is, what it means to things, and it'll resonate with a lot of your work. You can actually apply so much in that bit of work, which is called GMP. So.
But every company, I certainly think anyway, Fujifilm you get a full GMP. It's called GMP passport when you join the company as well, so you get the full training on everything. So even if you have limited or no experience, if you have a knowledge of it, when you're going into an interview or something, that's really good. But then when you get there, you do get the full training package as well, so it's not something to worry about too much. Certainly going in with a bit of knowledge is important.
I think within QC and QE you won't be allowed to do any sort of work at all unless you have the GMP passport. Whereas with R&D and AD there's a bit more flexibility where you can go in there and learn that side while you're doing it. Because those departments, there's no material going into people. It's once it hits us that's where the rules and regulations.
It's where they cross over. It's the principle. It's that experiment that you ran and you got that result once. And then if you read kind of even the basics of GMP, and said, actually, if I followed a bit of that, probably my likelihood of getting that experiment I did in the lab and it only worked once, getting that result again would probably be a little bit higher. So, like I said, it does feed down into your kind of your consciousness and your thinking. And as you start to work, in an industrial lab versus an academic lab, 3 replicates is no longer kind of bomb-proof proof that this thing works. It starts to run into hundreds of replicates of doing the same thing and getting the same answer each time. And then how do you show that? Well, you do the GMP stuff and you write down which lot of chemical you're using, and then you see something different happen, and you say, oh right, we ran out of that one, we use a different bottle for this, and you start to pick up those trends in your own work. And so it feeds back all the way back to the early R&D, all the way through manufacturing.
So that's like an example of the satellite sample. Obviously, as a completely, morally devoid salesman, I'm going to throw in the best sample I've ever produced in the centre of the specification what they've asked for. But these guys went in there and said, look at the extremities of where they come. Run them through the systems and say, does that impact on my process at all? Because that's where running these things, each and every component, that variability in them has to be accounted for. And is it something that I have to worry about? And that battery recording, that variation, understanding, and because it's able to understand the impact of it is huge. And that's why drug development is so long, why it's so expensive, to go through the stages, is because the risk of failure isn't worth considering.
I mean, this is why we can send auditors out to go out and look at the facilities for the materials that we purchased, because it's not even just the material that we purchased, what was manufactured in that vessel before that. Is it a dedicated vessel that's only ever manufactures polysorbate in? Or do they make polysorbate and hydrochloric acid? Or what do they do elsewhere in that facility? Where is it located? Is it on a dock next to 20-foot rats, or is it in a nice shiny building with the best of the best kind of extraction goods and all that sort of thing? So they're the things that we need to know.
Is that something what you will have access to? So like you being from Fuji, can you go to Croda and see, like, show us, how you store it and stuff?
Yeah, so how that would generally come through? It would come through an audit request.
That's my area, vendor assurance, yeah. Vendor assurance. So we start with, just one of our TPLs who's working on the programme will say, we need this material. We haven't got it, we need to source it. So we'll source it. And we enter into, with people like Croda, where we enter into contract with them to say, can you make it, or do you make it? Tell me where it's actually manufactured. Do you make it your site? Is it manufactured in China? Is it manufactured in the US? Actually, does somebody else, do you make it in 50-ton bags and it's shipped to somewhere else to be subdivided into small boxes, then shipped to somewhere else to be tested? We need to know its entire path. And we have to enter into quite lengthy legal documents and confidentiality disclosure agreements and things like that with some of them. Some of them will tell us, some of them won't. If they don't, then we have to kind of go into them as though it's a high-risk material and test it for everything that we could possibly test it for. And still also look at it, well, actually, is the risk too great? Do we spend £5,000 buying this material over here, or £20,000 buying the same one over here, but this one has all the bits of paper and this one doesn't? And that's the difference. And because it, like I said, at the end of the day, it's our QP who was responsible for signing that batch off. She needs to know that everything that went into that batch is accounted for and is correct and is being tested. Because if somebody dies, she's the one that goes to prison. Not me, and not a member of my team who authorised it to be used. She's the one that goes to prison. And that's why she gets picked.
So for us as a supplier side, when I say complete access, if you are coming and you're a competitor of ours and also says, we want to come and crawl over your process, we may say no, right, just because of the odds. If we're supplying into the pharma industry, then we take that as a price, as an access price that we need to pay to get into the market, that we have to give full visibility and disclosure. And that includes allowing them to come watch an email, have full access to all audit records. It isn't enough to have third-party audit things which are compressed. We do those as well. So if you're just looking for a general supplier audit, say the quality of the thing that you might find across Europe, there's collectively people present the audits and the share audit plans around them, even though they're not buying that material, because it's defining effectively a secure supply base. So there are plants, areas where we manufacture materials that would not go into the pharma industry. And then there are plants that are dedicated for the pharma industry, even for the excipients, because of the quality standards you have to pay. One thing that we have as a thing is we don't go to the lowest common denominator. If any of our production facilities service a market with a higher level, so if they do any material into the pharma industry, every single material that we produce on that has to remain to the same standards. So we don't downgrade. Now, not every one of our sites is at that standard, but we're the ones we place, we quote across. So other people get a real quality benefit that they are not yet asking for. I think is because they do need it, they're just not realising it. Any other points that anybody wants to bring up?
I also want to talk about job security. Being like close insurance or
So at Fujifilm we have literally a week ago, 2 weeks ago, just finished a recruitment drive for our side of Billion with 56 people, and that's split. Few in manufacturing, I think we've got 9 to go into the lab, and probably about 10 or 15 extra with quality assurance in the various areas. The site's doing very well. We're full capacity, to the point where we're actually expanding the facility because we don't have any manufacturing space. And one of the reasons why we bought the Texas site is so we can develop a platform where we can do a lot of R&D and development work at Elliott and ship the process to Texas to be manufactured in the single-use reactors over there. So we're kind of cross-functional. We've got a program who is being manufactured at Billingham, and then it's also transferred to our North Carolina site because they have the capacity to manufacture and we don't. We've also got connections with MSD over in Bree because they have 5,000 reactor, 20,000 reactor sitting empty, which we need. So we're growing quite rapidly. The quality department, we've had about, last count was 140 something people, but it's about 600 on our site, isn't it?
And if I was to take that as a wider, I've been in industry 27 years. If there's one set of departments that rarely, if ever, contracts, it's quality departments. And that's because every year the requirement to improve quality, you never reduce quality standards. You always, the benchmarks are always going up. And that isn't always just new equipment. It's people, service time. As you said, the teams to be able to run and make sure there's equipment to respond. Because how many times have you done an experiment and it's gone wrong? And only then have you gone to look at what's your dosing pump like, what's your measure, what's your standards that you've used there and realise that actually they're aged. And then you think to yourself, I'll do it again. The course is all about never getting to that stage, never abandoning that, ensuring that when you go through that result is true.
I say it's a very secure job as well because quality is always going to be needed. You can't ever manufacture a drug and release it without quality. So
It's the hot topic of the FDA at the moment, and certainly it's being spread across all of the data integrity. So your audit trails behind your HPLC and you see that somebody's integrated your chromatograms correctly, have been in and changed something, has somebody gone in and changed the clock, has somebody done this, done that. Everything, every piece of equipment, software, you name it, form, system has had to go through a data integrity assessment without that outside one. So, and the FDA are all over it.
Just add.
Yeah, no. So next year it'll be another hot topic.
So, to answer the question, it's a very secure. As long as the business is functioning, then that role is generally very secure.
I always thought that you needed like specific qualifications to get into like
well,
yes,
I
and
have
yes, no. It depends really. A lot of it can be based on your previous experience. And we have kind of programs within Fujifilm where we start people off at the very, very bottom. There's a coming in as a startup analyst and working through Fuji people complete a degree, and as kind of an apprenticeship program, but we have that cross site on engineering and all sorts of things. People do open university courses for their MBQs, and there's a lot of invested in development, and the way that the training packages are changing at Fuji, it's not just about your qualification, it's about competency. Can you do the job? You could have a PhD in biochemistry, but can you stand for it in an HPLC and work it?
That cuts across. So look at quality, is mirrored in the safety side. So systems and the regulatory requirements in safety and quality are very, very similar and share people sometimes. In the UK, you have to demonstrate competence, and that's the biggest difference from anything else. Is you come out with a degree, or you've demonstrated capability to learn in an environment at that standard, given the right thing. It doesn't determine competence, and so no matter where you go, which company, in a regulated area like health and safety or quality, then every company, whether it be simply doing an acid value, you will have to demonstrate that you can carry out that very, very basic test to the standard with the level of deviation within the acceptable and in your peer group, and you will have to do that regularly to maintain competence on that. So, do you need the formal aspect of QC? No, I don't think you don't see much where you would have that defined. It's taking those basic skills and then applying them from that aspect to bring to the quality of that action.
So personally, I left university, graduated with a biology degree, and ended up working at Fujifilm straight away in a chemistry role. Personally, I left. I went to university. I was late going to university. I was a past major student, so I did it twice. And I left university with my HND in applied science. And it was, I left because I was pregnant at the time. But it was the company that I worked for at the time were making people closing the site for redundancies, and I took the job in QA at Fujifilm because it was more based on the analytical background and the technical, and because I had the knowledge, I knew what to do with the HPLC and what the chromatograms meant. I had the working knowledge, not the bit of paper. And from there, I'm now quality manager. Oh. It hasn't done me any harm.
And as a non-quality person, that's a thing. But it's what you see in QC and QA, it's mindset. It's how you tackle a particular task. Are you a kind of try everything, do a bit here, do a bit there, do a bit over there? Maybe that's not the QC mindset. But if you work in a very structured, ordered way, and you have that kind of thing of, no, I really want to know, I'm really going to find out, and I'm going to spend the time doing it, and I don't mind doing it again and again and again until I get it right. And that's kind of the mindset you see finding in QC labs and people working there.
If you don't mind confrontation,
Yeah.
a bit of thick skin.
Yeah.
Confrontation, because policeman is exactly the right word. You're not going and saying, you're not doing that. You might be doing it for all what you believe to be the best reason, because there's a customer that needs it urgently and you're trying to cut this out and that. That's why it's independent, and most businesses are independent, so you don't have conflict of interest. You say, no. You've got to be strong to anybody. He says, come back, even Steve coming down.
CEO.
CEO, Steve Bagshaw, who comes down. Right to say, no. He may have lied you.
So I understand the what kind of communication skills your department try to use when you formulate project with other people in R&D groups? Sometimes you find some problems of people's work or mistakes of people's work. I think that's quite important of the teamwork.
So going as far back as R&D, they are what we class as non-GMP, so they are very much, let's see what it does, let's not document anything correctly kind of thing. Because quality assurance don't get involved with that sort of side. It's once it kind of crosses that line in the GMP world, that's when we step in and say, right, no, you can't just add what you like to that mobile phase to make it work. We need to go back to R&D and analytical development as well, who develop methods to say, okay, have you seen this before? Tell me why this won't work. Tell me why you think that this is happening. So we've got an instance at the moment where I've set our meeting for tomorrow where we've got a particular sample and it won't freeze. And we're trying to test its osmolality. It worked fine apparently in our AD, but it's coming to QC and we can't get it to freeze, so therefore we can't get it to give us the result we want. We need to understand why we need to do it quickly. So, I've had to put a meeting in tomorrow for everybody to sit around the table and discuss that. But it's very good that we need to kind of bring their knowledge in, but we're not kind of saying to them, well, you're doing that wrong, because that's still very much a development area. It's once they've nailed the process down, nailed down the manufacture, that's when we step in.
Well, QA will quite often come to QC, and both me and Mr. as managers have had to sit down with certain people and say, your work isn't quite up to standard as well. So for people skills wise, we're in a very call it a very open and honest environment. You have to be, because if something's not quite right, you can't just say, oh yeah, that's fine. You need to pull people on these things. It's not an awful atmosphere or anything like that. It's nice, and it's just a very, just make sure you watch this the next time when we track things like how many comments people get on the work that they do and stuff. So it's just, we class it very open and honest, that's what we say.
It's trying good communication with everything.
Yeah.
But do you notice in their presentation how they used an emotional power to get a message? They personalised it to family. And this is quality and health and safety both have this. And they have the ability to turn around and say, I'm protecting you against something that you do, that a mistake that may happen, that if it comes back, it will never be able to forgive. And that's the death that is the people, and that's by an action, a shortcut or anything like that. So while it's a police, it's a protection of the individuals. So for me, it was very cavalier and all things like that. I absolutely applaud control management systems because it allows me to function the way I am without feeling that if I overstep the mark, there's somebody there that is going to stay.
I always look at it, for me, they always say a lot about go with your gut. What does your gut tell you? And that's what a lot of quality assurance is. What does your gut tell you to do? And in my head, I always say, would I inject this into my child? Do I feel comfortable that if my child needed this, I'll give her it? And if the answer is no, then that's it.
Sorry, I think I'm struggling to understand the difference between quality control and assurance. What's the difference?
So quality control, they are the people who actually analyse the product. They do all of the testing. So it would be the people in the lab doing all of the testing. It then comes to, say, myself, who then does a technical review of all of the work. But we don't have anything to do with doing the final sign-off. It goes to quality assurance to then they review everything and they're independent to quality control. And they do the final sign-off, so they check to make sure everything is filled in correctly. So we do the actual filling in as QC, and then they do the check.
It's allowed to be done.
Right, guys, thank you very much for your